basic premise is that we have to understand how sound works and how it flows, how it works its way through the system. Because if you don't understand that, you can't troubleshoot anything. The basic premise of almost every troubleshooting issue that we have to deal with in sound is that somewhere there's a disconnect, okay? So everything has a source. A source is either a vocal, an instrument, or like your computer or iPad or whatever you plug, you know, your 1/8" headphone jack into. Those are all considered sources. So when a sound guy says there's nothing coming out of the source, most likely means that the guitar doesn't have a good battery or the computer is muted or something along those lines. So what I want you to do is be able to troubleshoot from start to finish. So we start at the source. So remember when we were looking at the iPad and we saw all those little meters? Well, if you aren't getting meter from, say, Kaya's microphone, the first thing to do is to be like, is this person actually singing? So, or are they making any noise? Because you won't see any signal there if there's nothing coming out of it. The second thing to check is their cable. These are XLR cables. It's pretty great. And so we would check this cable by just basically swapping it out for another cable. And I'm gonna grab one microphone, I'll be right back. Okay, microphone. So the person's singing to this microphone and there's no cord in it, that means there's not gonna get any sound. Or if the cord is bad, then again, it won't have any sound. So then the cord that they've got their mic plugged into gets plugged into a particular channel on the snake. And in this case, 11 looks like the one we're gonna use. So you check the soundboard and say, okay, they're supposed to be plugged into channel 11. Those little numbers we showed you in another video, I'll show you again. They look like this. They're right next to that tiny little bit right there. So this is channel 11, should match what's on the snake. So right now we've got some sound coming out of this. You can kind of hear a little echo coming off the gym wall. And you can see that the green meter is there. So this mic and this cord is all working, but let's say that it wasn't working. Sometimes you'll see something like this, where there's a slight disconnect. It'll be just that little bit. Okay. Or it'll be just not plugged in all the way. Or it'll be laying here next to the snake and you're like, oh, what's going on? And all you have to do, plug it in, boom, that's working. Now, inside of this cable that you're gonna see here, if this still wasn't working, this long snake cable that we see goes back all the way to the sound cart and just rumbles around and around and around. And then you actually see these. These are all the cables. They're just basically XLR cables. They're just tiny. They're all wrapped inside this thing. So channel 17, you need to make sure that it's plugged in to channel 17. Really hard to see down inside here, but you can see that there are, in fact, numbers next to all those channels, 15, 16, all the way across. Sorry, we're working with channel 11. So channel 11's over there in the darkness, but it is there and you can see it. And so that would be where you check to make sure that cable is plugged in. Okay, then after that, what happens is it's gone out of the microphone, into the cable into the snake into the soundboard. The soundboard then sends that signal out of the main outputs, which are all the way over on this far side of the soundboard, all the way down here. They're currently white and orange, and they're going to the mains. So this is the white cable that's powering the wall speakers, and the orange one is powering that overhead speaker. And then it goes into this amplifier. So that takes the sound and amplifies it. Pretty straightforward. So if you've got signal coming to the board, you're seeing the green light flashing, you're seeing meter on the sound, but you're not getting any sound out. Well, first of all, check your mutes. Make sure you're not muted for any reason. That happens a lot. Where you just got a soundboard muted, or you've got the fader pulled down, or those kind of issues that it's just on the board settings. But if that's working and everything's right, then it should be somewhere here in the connections. So you're checking these connections, checking these ones coming out into this amplifier. An amplifier amplifies the sound, and then it sends it out these gray lines. One is called extra, that's what we're calling the overhead speaker right now. And this other one is labeled mains, somewhere on this cord. and then that goes back out to there. So if any of these things are unplugged, you've got to disconnect. So then that comes out and goes all the way out to these speakers and is the final out of sound. Comes out the white ones or out the black ones, or in the other case, there's some monitor lines in there as well, and they're plugged into bus 1. It would come out of these monitor speakers down here. So the path of sound always starts at out. I can't sing into my face. Well, I can, but it doesn't sound very good. So when I'm singing out of my face, or whatever that looks like, the sound is coming out first, and then it goes into the microphone. It goes out of the microphone into the cable, out of the cable into the snake, out of the snake into the soundboard, out of the soundboard into the amplifiers, out of the amplifiers to the speakers, and then the speakers out and into people's ears. That's how the sound path works. So you need to follow, starting from the source if you're troubleshooting, and work your way all the way through the system and make sure that channel is correctly working. To troubleshoot, let's say that the snake, even though it's plugged in, actually has a bad wire in it. If you needed to emergency get by on something, we could take channel 11 and unplug it from the snake and go over to the snake where it's plugged into the soundboard and unplug it from channel 11 and plug direct in, and you would see, and you can kind of hear, we're now getting that sound directly. The snake is just essentially an extension cord for the microphones, or for these XLR cables in this case. The same thing would apply for an instrument. You make sure that the instrument is making sound, and then check your cables and work your way all the way down through the sound system. Hopefully that's helpful in troubleshooting and finding things. With instruments, you got to make sure they have power, whether that's a battery or that the cord is plugged into the wall, or that their power supply isn't damaged in some way. If they've got a little AC adapter, power pack thing that plugs in the wall, or to an extension cord, and the extension cord is plugged in the wall. So you start with power on instruments, make sure they're getting power. And then after power, you're just checking cords to make sure that they're good. With the guitar, a lot of times there's a 1/4 inch cable, kind of like what we did with the monitors. It'll have this kind of end on it. Again, guitar, this cord might be bad for a guitar. And so you want to make sure that you can just swap that cord out and make sure that's not the problem. Then after that cord, they might go into a DI box. And a DI box is one of these guys. There's all different kinds around here. There's red ones and blue ones and black ones. But they take that 1/4 inch connection and they convert it to an XLR so that it fits into the snake. And they also do some things with grounding and buzz and things like that. But they might be plugged into a DI box. The DI box could be bad, so swap the DI box. Just swap components starting at the source, work your way all the way down the line to find out whether or not it's where the problem is, I should say. And then after that, it's pretty straightforward. If your soundboard is on, if your microphone is getting green meter on the soundboard, and if your wow. Interesting. If you're getting signal from your microphone and there, you're getting meter and you're getting signal all the way down and through, there should be no reason that you shouldn't have sound coming out of the system.